So, good afternoon from this corner. Very warm welcome, and it's nice to be with all of you this Friday afternoon. Of course, it could be morning or evening. This subject, what shapes our thinking and how to shift it. In fact, it would be interesting to hear your thoughts. Do pop them in the chat. We've got it as you can chat with host, co-host, so you can send it to myself. I'd be happy to bring it in. And as we go through your reflections and your questions, it would be great to hear. And I quite like this quote by a science fiction writer and scientist, Isaac Asimov. Your assumptions are your windows on the world. Scrub them off every once in a while, or the light won't come in. So there are all sorts of stories about, having perception on the world, and actually, at a very physical level, we can definitely relate. So for this topic, we're going to invite Mark, who's connecting with us from, as we would say in Cambridge, the other place, from Oxford. And he's been connected with the practice of Raj Yoga for more than 30 years. And, the word that I would describe Mark is balanced. He's got this dedication. You can tell there's a seriousness to spirituality, but there's also a lightness which is much needed for something which is a life study, but a playfulness and very much naturally caring nature. So it's always a pleasure to connect and learn also. Sometimes between the lines we learn from each other. So yes, as we said, we look forward to also hearing from you, but we're going to be hearing from Mark, and after that, more of a sort of dialogue, and we'll finish with meditation. So yeah, good evening or afternoon, on the brisk here. Welcome.
Thank you, Sarah. So I'll try and deliver something which is balanced and caring, at least. So lovely to be with you all this lovely period of time. And that's one of the things since doing things online, that it teaches us to be a bit more unlimited in the context of time and geography, of course. So this is a very wonderful topic, which I think it was spawned on the basis of something that I was invited to do a talk some while ago in April or May, and there's a kind of theme which came up during it, and it was felt that let's explore that a little bit more. And because of that, we had this topic. So and that is the history behind it. So what shapes our thinking, and then the important thing, how to shift it. Because there's always at least two, sometimes three aspects that we try and cover in the talks that we generally do in Brahma Kumaris. One is the what's going on, and the second one is how to bring about transformation. And sometimes we also deal with the why as well. Why is it like it is? So this is going to be a little bit organic, but there's a few things I definitely want to share with you. Plus, I've got a PowerPoint, which I promise not to bore you to death with. But just to reference, I may use that just to embellish what I'm sharing. So we are, of course, well, I won't say of course, we are all living beings. And many of you may be knowing, and some of you will be knowing an awful lot about the knowledge that's shared by Brahma Kumaris, and some of you may not know any of it. And either is good. So what I'm going to be focusing on is the power of our consciousness, understanding our consciousness. And just to give some perspective on that, the idea here is that we are all human beings. Anyone who's not a human being, please put up your hand now. or,
Or your paw.
or your paw, yes. So on account of no response, then we are all human beings. And therefore, we all have a body and we are all a being in the human costume. And that's an important starting point, even if it's a very obvious one, because as we all have bodies, we are all engaged in the physical realm of life. And it doesn't matter whether you are kind of just very physical in your life or whether you've adopted a spiritual journey in life. The reality is everyone in the world is engaged in physical life. If you're in the world at all, it means you're engaged in physical life. Someone may get up for prayers or meditation. Another person gets up to go to the factory or the office, but is still getting up and is doing something. So everyone is engaged in the physical realm of existence, of life. And that one, everyone, is the living being, which we generally call the soul. So the idea is we are souls. And as I'm starting at this point, I'm just going to share my PowerPoint, actually very briefly. So just so we're on the same page, the idea is that this is the bust of someone, but the soul sitting here. I mean, there's variations on the idea of exactly where the soul might sit in the head. I think it's a bit closer to the forehead, but anyway, the whole principle is there's the soul inside of the body. And what I'm sharing about is mostly about this living being, the soul, and the interaction that the soul has with the material world via the five physical senses, but also via our power of perception. And in connection with that, just to also get us on the same page, generally speaking, what we do is divide, for the point of understanding, we divide the power of the soul into three sub-powers, which is mind, intellect, and resolves, or registers, as is put there. And I think it's useful to understand that the soul, which means every one of us sitting here on our computer or phone, listening to Mark speaking right now, every one of us is a soul. And as a soul, we are a living energy, a living power, and we are thinking and feeling, and perhaps wandering off here or there, imaginations coming in, thoughts coming in, remembering to do this or that is coming in. And whatever is emerging in your awareness, on that level, we would say is the mind. So mind is the label for the power of the soul to think, feel, experience, to know, to absorb. So when you know something, you're really employing your power of the mind, which is able to keep absorbing into. It's just the word mind, but generally that's how it's used in that way. And a second power on this PowerPoint is the intellect, which in this context is really the same power of the soul, but in this instance, the self, the soul, is discerning, deciding, controlling the flow of thoughts, perhaps, selecting to focus on a particular thought or direction of thought, or I focus on an idea. So this kind of thing, to realize, to recognize, is the power of the intellect. It's the same, it's still the power of the soul, But when the soul is doing that, we call it intellect. And then thirdly, the resolves, which in the Hindi audience will know as sanskars, is the soul's power to express what it is. So your power to manifest what you are on the level of the mind as thoughts and feelings, or expressed further in the form of vision and attitude, or expressed further in the form of words, actions, deeds. So that's the power in the soul to manifest the self, manifest what I am at any one moment. And generally speaking, we say we have good sanskar, good personality traits and bad ones like anger, greed, attachment, abrasiveness, laziness would be said to be bad tendencies, and happiness, peace, love, joy, wisdom would be said to be good ones. That's in a very simplistic way because I'm not really going into this subject, but I wanted to give a kind of grounding on it. So we have this power in the soul to manifest the self, manifest what I am. So hopefully everyone's good with that. So ignore those 3 hours. I'll come to those later if I need them, which I probably will. So as living beings, we are in the continuous movement within ourselves as a conscious being, meaning that everything we think has an influence on us, everything we feel has an influence on us, everything we see and hear can have an influence on us, but not necessarily, and everything that happens to us can have an influence on us. And the reason I said can, because that's in the context of the external. What's going on inside means it's already happening inside. So definitely is going to be an influence going on there, be it good or bad, empowering or disempowering. And so we are living our life through our 5 senses, especially sight and hearing, navigating our way through life. And unknowingly, what we have been doing is getting an awful lot of influence. And one of the reasons for that is because we have become increasingly externalized, meaning the awareness of the self has been shifting from awareness of who I am, this living being, who's a being of light, being of peace, being of power. I've lost that self-awareness in that true sense of the word, the spiritual sense of self-awareness. I've lost that, and therefore I've lost the awareness of my true peace, true love, true power, true happiness. Now, the soul, is inherently, by nature, loveful, peaceful, joyful, powerful. And so as I've taken the eye off myself and I've externalized and I'm looking here, there, and wherever, then each one of us in our own ways has been seeking these experiences via relationships, food, media, walks in the park, study. There's whatever's in the world, that's an opportunity for someone to try and find fulfillment. So the driving force in humanity is to try and find that love, find that peace, find that happiness. And of course, we find it in some shape or form, but none of it's permanent because the happiness I find, the peace I find, the love I find is always attached. It comes in a package, which is a person, a place, a thing, an event, an achievement, an ability, and so on. So all of these feelings of attainment that I get it comes in as a form of attachment. And so we gradually lose our peace, our love, our power. And so we get in this loop, constantly looking, finding less and less fulfillment, and therefore the soul is burning up spiritual power to try and find the love, the peace, the happiness, the original state of which exists inside. So I think many can relate with that now, which is probably why you're here. So let's now look at the principle of how the consciousness works. And this is an idea I've been exploring for some time, both to grasp it on as deep a level as I can, but also to internalize it so I can experience it within myself. Sound cryptic? Well, all will be revealed. So, I'm a spiritual being, and there are certain laws within which the self, the soul functions. No one made the laws, just like gravity is there. Someone called it gravity, but it's not that it didn't exist before then. That is a phenomena of the natural world. So in the same way, there are certain natural phenomena of the human consciousness. And using the word law is a useful word because it kind of puts it in a certain context. And once you understand the law of anything, then it makes you powerful because you can use that law to better yourself. And then an example I really like, simply because I went to the Science Museum fairly recently, and there's a replica of the Wright brothers' aeroplane. In fact, the Wright brothers came to the Science Museum in, I think, 1905 or something, and built this replica of the one that they took the first flight with. So that's the first flight of man, officially anyway. And then, so that was 2000, sorry, that was 1903. And what's interesting is in 1919, so that's what, 13 years later, someone flew an aircraft across the Atlantic. So just 13 years, and a man had been trying to fly for such a long time. Of course, it was a combination of materials available, engines available, understandings available. But that was a combination of understanding, in the main one, the law of aerodynamics and the laws within that, thrust and lift. I don't want to go into aeronautics, but the reason for mentioning it is once you understand the law, then trying to achieve something is much simpler than if you don't. And I don't know if you've ever seen any of those old movie clips or film clips of all manner of individuals, men and women, trying to create flying machines. And I'm sure there were a few severe casualties into the bargain until they started to get it right. So we are trying to bring about transformation. We want to, essentially, we are here, and why I've been on this journey for 30 plus years. There's Sarah who's been on it for so many years, all of you doing your own journey for so many years or however long. We are trying to find a way to feel fulfilled. Is that fair to say? We want power, peace, love, happiness, freedom, understanding, wisdom, all these things. Great, thank you, Ellie. So we are looking for that, but there is a very powerful principle at work continuously in our entire life, and that is whatever you hold in your awareness, that is what you become. This was taught to me many years ago by the person who really guided me in this meditation practice. Whatever you hold in your awareness, so you become. doesn't sound so extreme, but it's got extreme implications. For example, if someone remembers God, you say people remember God. Or in meditation, I'm trying to remember God. Now, what is the driving force for me to remember? Maybe it's to experience peace. So if I'm remembering God or doing anything to try and achieve something, it by default means what? I don't have what I'm trying to achieve. If I'm remembering God for peace, or God give me peace, or God give me patience, it means I don't feel it at that time. That's why I'm looking for it. And now, if I remember that axiom, whatever you are aware of, so you become, then if my core awareness is I don't have peace, which is why I'm remembering God for peace, the state of no peace is being reminded to my consciousness on a deep and subtle level. So though I get something from my action of worship or meditation or whatever, but I'm actually reminding the subtlety of my being that I am not having peace. And of course, you can copy that across every aspect of ourselves: love, power, confidence, etc., etc. And I found this so, so, so important because I've invested a great deal of my life in spirituality. And I say invested because I really wanted to achieve an elevated, well, let's use a different word, a very a kind of deeply insightful state of being, a very stable, powerful consciousness where I'm not influenced by anything outside. And yet, for many, 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 many years, making lots and lots and lots and lots of effort, I found that by not realizing this fundamental truth, then the amount of attention or effort I was making was getting me rather small amounts of transformation. And here comes the parallel with men and women trying to learn how to fly. And I did try and learn to fly once, actually, just before embarking on this Brahma Kumaris gliders, which is a lot of fun and highly recommended. So it takes a kind of subtle attention on the self to turn an eye within to see what is the driving force in my soul, in myself, that's making me come out to do something, to try and get something, to commune with God, or whatever it is. What's the driving force? And once I've recognized it, if I'm not feeling a fulfilled state, if I'm going out to try and get some deeper quality, deeper experience, then that's an opportunity then for me to remember the principle. Okay, the whole idea is being in the consciousness of what I'm trying to achieve. Now, this may seem like a paradox. Well, I'm trying to achieve it because I don't feel it. So, pretty obvious, really. I don't feel peace. That's why I want peace. But there's a way to stabilize the self in a state of peace and then perform the action, whether that's general activity or whether it's prayer or meditation. And that is to ask the self what it would feel like if I was experiencing what I want. And in Brahma Kumaris speak, what we often hear and share with others is be soul conscious and then remember the supreme being, supreme soul, if you want to entertain that aspect. But the first thing is be soul conscious, be aware of yourself, the living being. And when I'm aware of myself, the living being, as the living being is indestructible, eternal, a subtle form of non-physical light, when I'm aware of myself on that level, there is naturally, automatically a feeling of coolness and peace. Because when you have no context of death, soul does not die, then how can you feel peaceless? So we start to feel the peace. We feel the truth of the self, that is, I am an eternal being. And then along comes power, love, and happiness. So they're all connected. But it starts with the awareness of I, the eternal being. And one way to access that, as I suggested, is to ask the question, what would it feel like? Because many times I've tried to tell myself, I am a soul, I am peace, which is good. And if it works, that's fine. But if you find there's inner resistance, then asking the question of it is even more effective because it bypasses that resistant mind, resistant intellect. Okay, so I just want to show you this diagram which I put together. So totally ignore the 3 arrows at the moment because they were supposed to come up later. So just pretend they're not there. So this is the consciousness of the body. This green circle represents the soul or the consciousness. And so the green bit is the consciousness of the body, and the blue bit is the consciousness of the self, the soul. And all the way around the outside, you could say, is the physical body, and further than that, the physical world. Most of our time, we are in the green section. Now, bear in mind, the green section is like an aspect of our consciousness. That is, I, this spiritual being, am holding an awareness. Remember, one aspect of ourselves is we are continually holding one awareness or another. It's like a modus operandi. It's like a blueprint with which we operate. And we've got many of them. So, and one general one, which is in my case under the label of Mark. Mark is the name for the body, but Mark is also the label for the Mark consciousness, the awareness that I hold of myself as this person. So that's Mark consciousness for me. If there's some other Mark on the on this call, then you have got a different Mark consciousness to me. Just thought I'd make that clear. So we're all individual, and if there's identical twins, then you have same bodies, not very closely the same, but obviously very different consciousness. So as you see on this, the soul awareness is where we would like to be in order to experience what we are. But we are glued to this bodily awareness or consciousness of the body. Glued because we have to hold it to live in this world, to walk, talk, interact, do your job, relationships, cook, and all sorts of things. And what we're learning is to disengage from that consciousness of the body. It's like putting it down when I don't need to be in it. Put it down, step back, and feel the eternity of the self. Feel unlimited love, unlimited peace, whatever you wish to experience. Because everything that we really, really want is available when we disengage from the consciousness of the body. But the sanskar, as I mentioned earlier, is this force of expressing what you are. It's inherent in the soul. So as soon as I'm in the consciousness of the body state, then that sanskar, the personality traits, that energy to express, keeps on throwing me further and further out of myself. And via the sense organs, I'm lost in the world. Actually, at this point, can I just have an indication? Just going to back off for a minute. If everyone's still with me and you haven't decided, blow this, I'm going to make a cup of tea and pretend I'm still here. Very good. Anushka's here, and Daniela is here. Very good. Very and Kay as well. Great. Oh, very good. It's looking good. Thank you. So then via the senses, there's a physical world perceived by the senses. There are objects, there are tasks we need to do, and there are events that happen. So all of those three are totally neutral. They're just objects, just tasks, and just events. There's nothing that you can say is good or bad. And really, although it may seem challenging, that applies to every single event. It is just an event. Every single task is just a task, and every object is just an object. Until we bring the senses involved to look at the objects, use our eyes, our ears, our touch to experience the objects. The task, we have some responsibility in connection with the task. So now the task has become mine to some extent. And events, if I start to experience them because I feel connected or involved. And very often, like the global events that are going on, very often I may not have any involvement, but I'm experiencing it because I've connected with it through YouTube or otherwise. And then what happens? The objects that I sense through the body tends to pull me into body consciousness. The tasks that I identify in the context of my responsibility pulls me into role consciousness. I have a role in connection with such and such a task. And the events which I then experience, I bring into my experience, becomes my story. So everyone's got a story. Yeah, from your childhood, this happened, that happened, adolescence, this happened, that happened, etc., etc. So, it's like when people get to the pub and they start talking, what do they talk about? Their stories, usually with an increasing elaboration as the drinks flow, if my memory serves me right. So, story. So the story, the role I have, and the bodily awareness are all in this. Can you see my cursor moving? So that's all
Yes.
within. Great, thank you. I'm holding that in this outer consciousness of the soul. So it's worth realizing that I, the soul, am applying meaning to every single thing I see or hear or sense in any other way, in most cases. And very often, the meaning I'm applying is not always that useful. It's often based on some kind of fear or limitation, loss, or what have you. Now, I'm not trying to diminish anything that someone has experienced or is experiencing, because I know these things are really challenging. And something like grief, for example, is a huge thing to get through. So I'm not diminishing any of that. I'm just want to convey what's happening in the soul and a way that we can actually deal with the emotions, eruptions, even the distresses in a way where we can kind of bring more peace, more power, and more kind of space between what's happening and the self. So the idea then is to keep shifting back to the soul awareness. Whatever I am, so I become. So then if I want peace, I want love, I want happiness, the deeper I can feel that in myself and come into expression, then I'm reinforcing that state continually. And so the more I make the soul awareness my foundation, then the less, oh, then the less I'm going to be influenced or pulled by the externals. So hopefully that clears it up. So then with spirituality, what we're learning through, particularly what the Brahma Kumaris are teaching, which is the understanding of the self as this conscious and conscient being, then there's a word called remembrance that we keep using. And remembrance meaning to remember who you are, remember what you are, remember whatever you want to re-become. And nature and circumstances tend to reflect back the consciousness that we are. And one wonderful model I've come across which illustrates this is that this whole world acts like a mirror. And so if you want happiness and you frown in the mirror, what will you get? You will get a frown. If you want abundance, but you look in the mirror with a face of poverty, what will you get? If you want health, but you look in the mirror with a vision or a face of ill health, what will you get? Ill health, of course. So the mirror, which means body and circumstances and other people, are reflecting back according to what I am at any one moment. And this is quite fantastic because what it means is we are like live wires, living energy beings who are continually vibrating, and we are affecting our surroundings. Hence, we have these words, vibrations and atmosphere. Atmosphere is the collections of your vibrations, determined mostly by the nature of our attitude. And collectively, we can create a very powerful vibration, which any of you who have been to Cambridge Centre or Global Retreat Centre, you would feel the power of the atmosphere. Or you go to a church, you feel the atmosphere, or anywhere for that matter. All right, comments or questions? So as we are these kind of live living energies, and yet we have completely lost the identity of the self and trying to find that attainment externally, this law of recognizing that whatever stage I hold myself in and allow that to permeate through my consciousness and my sense organs, then I'm actually inviting things to transform. And some of you will know that one of the ideas in Brahma Kumaris is to bring or create a world of happiness, a world of peace, a world of love, a world of harmony. Now you look around and you would be forgiven for thinking that's a bit of a lost cause. But in actual fact, one of the requirements of spiritual transformation and even world transformation is to ignore the evidence of your senses and also ignore the short-term history of your life. Because the senses are telling me what has happened up to this moment. But normally what we do is extrapolate that or see the future on the basis of what we see now. But people who are dreamers, creators, who have who are imagination, artists or great industrialists or what have you. They don't worry about what has been. They have a dream and they go and do it. And there's different individuals in all manner of human endeavor who have not worried about what has been done or what people say can be done. They've decided, I'm going to do this. One of the famous ones is the 4-minute mile by Thingy Bob. Brennan. Someone. Think him. Shortly after he completed the so-called impossible 4-minute mile, about 8 or 9 people did it the same year. Opened the door for it. And there's so many things like that in human endeavor, in the realm of science, etc. So to bring this kind of transformation in ourselves, or to redirect our thoughts, when we realize that whatever I'm thinking, I'm inviting something of that nature into my life. If I have fear, then I'm inviting circumstances that can create fear into my life. Now, it may not be nice to say, but I would feel I just want to share the principle with you, because then when we start realizing what we're doing, we can transform the direction of our consciousness, the direction of our thoughts. And so it's like having a personal audit and thinking, okay, in fact, what you could do is even look back on your life, what's happened, and think, what kind of state of mind was I in when such and such happened, or this person did such and such to me, or I allowed that to happen. Whatever was happening in your life, or things you may have messed up, or the opportunities missed, why you weren't able to take action at the time of need. I'm just throwing out a few ideas. Because we see the action, we see the result, but it's the state of mind which was the seed of that. So just seeing the time. So that was really one of the key aspects of understanding. I am this living being, and every moment, although it's usually every now and again I can check the self, but every moment I'm reinforcing the state of the consciousness I am in. And someone put it very nicely, that every thought you have is a vote for who you are. Okay, shall I hand over to Sarah to grill me?
Yeah, it's okay, can you hear me okay? Yeah, great. Oh yes, it was reminding me when I came across this organization from a Kumaris. I was teaching English in Southeast Asia, and this was the mirror for me, because the programming I'd had back in London was, I was not feeling peaceful because I'm living in London, and not fulfilled because I'm in the wrong job, and also relationships, the blaming circumstance, which it's normal, as if to do that. It's like, oh, I need to change this, change that. And I did change everything. So then here I am in a different continent, different job, different friends. And it lasted maybe a couple of months, really happy, everything fresh. But that creeping feeling of something not right. I was even free from others' expectations. And, this is what shapes our thinking, as you've laid out very clearly, what we're from the external. And so I changed that whole external story. But it was very insightful, but also very confrontational, that I realized there's something in me. So if there's anyone on this call that's feeling that, it would be interesting to hear your thoughts, because in a way it's empowering, but in a way the buck stops with us. So what is it that has helped you to manage, in a way, the inner system? Because it's not the external, it's my old programming. And then I want to evoke the, as you said, future led in a way. And that's a spiritual intelligence point as well, isn't it? Be led by a vision of the future, not dictated by the past.
Yeah.
It's so beautiful. So, how do you manage the gap, if you like? Um, we now know it's my responsibility and it's in my thinking. And then yes, how do you sort of manage that space, if you like, if that makes sense?
Thank you for that one. Really important as well because yeah, we've got the ideal, we've got the law, the method, but now how to actually deal with life, ourselves, and manage that gap. Well, I'll just share what I do and what I feel is really helpful, and that is to adopt some kind of routine where you regularly check in with yourself because we all must have had the experience where you have the best of intentions, but time just seems to disappear. And even like after hit this call, you may think, oh, well, I'll start meditating every day for 5 minutes, but then next week's um, class comes along and you find, oh, the week's gone already. And it's just amazing how quickly time goes. So it's about the, choosing a certain system and regimen for the self. And this is what's really helped. I'm saying this because it's really helped me that every morning I have meditation early in the morning. I have a spiritual knowledge input, and then I have we have something here called traffic control. I think they're doing Cambridge as well. Every hour, some music plays. I know some people have something on their phone where ping goes off and just reminds them to check in with the self. There's evening meditation a possibility. So to work out a program and don't spend long doing it. It's like a back of a envelope, literally. Um, I'll, how many times in the morning? Sorry, how many mornings I'll have meditation? How many mornings I'll just read a few sentences because that's just helps so much. It's surprising. You just read a little bit of spiritual uh, knowledge, spiritual input in a way that really which you connect with, and that just touches the soul and it reminds you. And then a little bit of meditation in the form of thinking some good thoughts, powerful thoughts, even such like as asking, how would it feel if I was really at ease with myself? What would be the feeling? What would be in my mind? How would I walk? How would I talk? It's like inviting your consciousness to deliver answers for the ideal that you may be looking for. So this kind of system helps so much to do that. And then also, whenever we fall down, which is going to happen, I'm afraid to say, stuff happens, some eruption comes up, and just to think, okay, that's a good lesson. Let me just pick myself up and carry on. And I've done that so many times that I can't remember because it's a marathon. It's not 100-yard sprint, I'm afraid.
And it's interesting that that ideal becomes a reference point, that we're sort of taking a premise maybe at the beginning that this exists, this true state of soul conscious freedom and peace. And some of us might have had a really big experience, others maybe a glimpse. And even if it's a big experience, we still need to keep it alive regularly. Otherwise, so many other things as if supersede or overlay it. But I've also found some system helpful, like a diary. It's almost like a
Mhm.
self-care diary, like just checking in how much sleep I'm getting and what I've been doing. And then there's a bit of compassion comes, when things are harder if you're tired, but also acknowledging when there is meditation, when you are practicing and there's a programming which kind of says, no, you're not doing anything, but say, no, I did make effort. It kind of gives you some acknowledgement, and then what works, you get to see how you feel. And it was from this that I realized that morning meditation changed my emotional stage a lot. And I never had a problem from then on committing to just waking up that bit earlier, because I could see from this diary how much it was helping. So yeah, I really agree. It's a great system, self-supporting.
Mhm.
So,
So,
yeah, Roger Bannister was the name you're looking for earlier.
well, thank you. Yes, that's him.
Thank you for that. Yes, if any questions, comments, do chip in the chat. Yes, so what this is a very practical point, and then when you're actually practicing the meditation, you mentioned to say to the self, how does it feel? And I think that helps us come out of our head, and that is good, especially in the West. We probably go into the knowledge part, but less into the felt sense. Would you like to say anything more about your practice, meditation practice? And of course, at the end, in a few minutes, we can have a little time for that. But do you have a variety of methods or?
I have a few methods which I employ, and one is to hold in my awareness this idea and understanding that the real self, I, is this soul, and just to cogitate, ponder on the wonder of being an eternal spark of light, spark of consciousness. And this idea, this method rather, can be applied to many aspects of spiritual knowledge. It's just really exploring it and trying to sense or feel the real message behind that idea. So yes, I'm a soul, but do I feel that? That's the kind of thought processing. I use the questioning an awful lot in my meditations. I gave a couple of examples of that. What would it feel like if? That's I find really useful. So I won't embellish that one because I shared a few examples during my talk. But another method which I use a lot is this kind of three-step disengagement in meditation, where I first of all think or become aware of the physical world around me, what I see, what I hear. I then bring my consciousness to this body and get a sense of this physical organism, the body of matter and bones and whatnot in this physical place, and just bring it home to myself that this is organic matter and all around me is generally inorganic matter, but it's all matter. And then to withdraw from that and kind of think of the self as this being of light in the forehead, not worrying too much about trying to find a locality because it's a spiritual thing anyway. So becoming conscious of matter, then conscious of self. And then I come a little bit deep and become aware of the bodily consciousness, which I showed on that PowerPoint. I just become aware that, yeah, my thinking, my awareness is actually all of related to the body when it's on the surface level. So it's like pull back from the body and just sense I have a consciousness of the body. And it's that consciousness I'm holding, which with which I'm operating, I'm living through the body. And when that's become clear, that there's the body and then there's this consciousness of the body that I'm kind of in, it's like an awareness which is totally wrapped around me, the soul, then it's like I'm identifying it, clarifying it, and then disengaging from that consciousness to feel I, the eternal soul, I, the being of light. And this it's very enjoyable to kind of step down, step out, step back, whichever expression makes sense to you, to experience the self. So I'm not trying to move away from, I'm just disengaging. And I find that really useful. And for quite a long time, I was practicing that, particularly when we had traffic controls. And I found it quite quick to go one, two, three. after a while of practice.
Yeah, it's very nice, this feeling of a relief from that package of, the story and the role, and sometimes objective language. And it came through a bit in what you said, the Mark consciousness, in this case, Sarah consciousness, and it
Mm,
triggers a whole package and activates a story. And it's neutral, it's not good or bad, but the feelings
mm,
that come up according to, if I've relied on that story for my peace or for my sense of security, that it's good to know that I don't have to rely on the conditions of the external and the story. So that little space, a lot of freedom comes. And someone's asking a question here. It's one of those chicken and egg questions. What comes first, a thought to create the awareness, or the awareness creating the thought?
mm. I think that's exactly as you put it, the chicken and egg one. Um, so yeah, because our consciousness is so cyclical in nature that yeah, I have an awareness, but from out of that awareness, thoughts emerge, and on the basis of those thoughts, some of them will be experienced more or felt more, and that will adjust or edit my awareness. But then we also have the intellect with which I can very consciously shift my awareness, but with the power of thought. So when we're doing that, we're using thought to change our awareness. For example, the I am body to I am soul. So I'm changing a very fundamental aspect of awareness, physical to spiritual, using understanding, but also using that understanding to create thoughts to shift the awareness. And then from that new awareness of I am soul, then spiritual thoughts will emerge automatically. Yeah, so it is a chicken and egg thing, but it's still good to know how it all works.
Yeah, it is. And someone called it like thoughts which we generate, a bit like announcements, sort of, it's, but it creates an atmosphere, and it's sort of like you say, what would uh, to take a premise or to see the position of the freedom or the peace of that soul, conscious soul. And then that's a cue as well. And then within that atmosphere, we're not looking actively outside, we're sort of suspending that for a moment. And then in the atmosphere, that consciousness as if gets a chance, I guess. It's,
Yeah.
it's interesting to play with. And then, yeah, that's just one thought that comes up.
Mhm.
So yeah, we've pretty much come to time, and it's very nice. I appreciate the sort of structure, but also flexibility to look at it. And, for all of us, some who are more experienced, but it never ceases to be these simple but hugely subtle aspects just getting refined. So it's a great
Yeah.
appreciation.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's like some of these ideas you can just keep on revising and visiting again and again, and it never gets dull. So we're having a meditation now.
Yes, that would be great, and a few minutes, and then we'll close. So yeah, thanks. Just take this opportunity to thank you, and also to everyone on this call for bringing your awareness, attention, because it does create atmosphere. So much appreciation. Yeah, so over to you, Mark.
Thank you. And yeah, thank you all of you for being here and participating. So, you're sitting with a certain sense of attention, vigilance. You have the visual on the screen if you want to rest your eyes on that point, which is very useful. And just bringing in the awareness for a moment, your surroundings, what you hear, see, sense, Just accept all as it is, that there's nothing to change. And bringing the consciousness to the body, however it is, just to acknowledge and accept that I've been living my life with this body and through this body. And let me now disengage and bring in the awareness that the reality is I am a spiritual being, a conscious energy. A being of light. And to feel the sense of separation between body and the self, the soul. As you look deeper inside, you may notice thoughts, feelings, awareness, thoughts of this or that. This is all to do with the physical consciousness. And to let that be and disengage and sit for a moment with the awareness, I am light. I am the being of light. Imagine the feeling of being literally a spark of pure consciousness. Imagine feeling so pure, so powerful, so peaceful. Imagine that feeling when one realizes that when I create thoughts in my mind and feel those thoughts, I'm creating a vibration that goes far and wide. Realize I really am creating my own reality. Knowingly or unknowingly, I am applying meaning to every experience, every scene. So now I can apply the best meaning, the most helpful meaning to every scene. So imagine feeling so powerful, so pure, so peaceful. and absorb any good feelings deep inside. Om Shanti. I am by nature peace, love, power. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Something we can practice, recreate. Much appreciated.
Thank you all, and very best wishes.
And we'll share the screen of thank you and the website, and there are activities also, talks and things from GRC also, and you can probably follow other talks with Mark there too. Thank you. And we have the courses, and if you're in Cambridge area, in-person retreats. So we'll meet again. Enjoy your weekend, and good luck with the practice. Have fun. Thank you.